Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from beautiful North Riverside, Illinois. On behalf of the Chicago Scots and our Board of Governors, many of whom are online with us now, and everyone here at Caledonia Senior Living and Memory Care, I welcome you. Thanks for joining us for today's Dram and discussion. This evening, we'll look at the UEFA Euro Championships and particularly Scotland's prospects. Today's programme will last about an hour. We'll hear from former Scottish international footballer Jamie Smith, who's in Nashville, the Scottish Government's Rory Hedderly, who's in Washington, DC, and Chicago Scots' very own Murray Findlay, who's just along the road in LaGrange, Illinois. We'll take a 30,000-foot look at the tournament and then focus on Scotland's squad, the group, Scotland's chances, and along the way I'll ask the panelists for their predictions. We'll have some time for your questions and for some discussion, and I encourage you to join in. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature below, and your questions will be seen by all of the panelists and my colleagues behind the scenes, and I will make sure we cover everything. My name's Gus Noble. I'm proud to serve as the president of the Chicago Scots, who this year celebrate our 175th anniversary. We're therefore the oldest charity, the oldest not-for-profit in Illinois. Our principal charity is a beautiful elder care community called Caledonia Senior Living, from where I speak today, and where we have an impeccable record of safety and success throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. The Chicago Scots welcome everyone who is Scottish by birth, by heritage, or simply by inclination. And we're committed to help tell Scotland's incredible story to the world. I know we'd all dearly love it if this story includes a chapter entitled Stevie Clarke's Tartan Army, all-conquering champions of Europe. But before we get into how this will surely happen over the coming weeks, please let me briefly introduce and ask a quick question of each of our panelists. Jamie Smith is a Scottish international footballer whose club career included Celtic and Aberdeen in Scotland and Den Haag in Holland, and the Colorado Rapids in the United States. In 2019, Nashville Soccer Club appointed Jamie as director of their elite youth academy. Jamie, thanks for joining us tonight. By being capped by Scotland is something very few people get to experience. Tell me, what did it feel like to pull on the blue shirt and feel the rampant lion on your chest as you walked out to represent Scotland?
Yeah, first of all, it's a pleasure to be on, and I really appreciate being invited in here. To play for Scotland is it's something that as a little kid you don't really think is going to happen. I grew up a Celtic fan in Glasgow and represented Celtic, but to play for your country is something different. It's just so much more special, and I was fortunate enough to play for the under-15s and pretty much all the way up through the different age groups, and every time you pull on the blue Scotland strip, it just meant something different. You could feel it. It was just something that is, again, as a little kid, you don't really envision yourself or see yourself having that honour, and that's how I see it. It was an honour to represent my country.
Well, we also have Murray Findlay with us tonight, and Murray will have some sense of what that feels like because he played for Scotland schoolboys before playing in the Scottish First and Second Divisions. After graduating from the University of Edinburgh, Murray came to the United States in 2001 and has been director of coaching at Chicago Edge, a youth soccer not-profit, since 2003. Murray organises the kids' football tournament at our Highland Games, and for that, Murray, we're most grateful. Murray, some of my happiest childhood moments were spent kicking a football around the park in Duns. What did football mean to you when you were growing up in Dumfries? And Murray, you're on mute. The phrase of 2020-21.
Is that better? Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me here. Well, I'm similar to you, Gus. You know, I grew up in Dumfriesshire, so it was a big rugby presence there. You know, similar to yourself, probably in the Borders. But you know, rugby was never an option for me. I remember my first memory of the World Cup and the Scotland national team was when Gordon Strachan scored against West Germany in '86 and tried to hurdle over the advertising boards at the side of the field. And since that day, I've been hooked, not just on football, but hooked on the Scottish national team. And, you know, since then, it's been, some of my friends drifted off to rugby because there was that environment. But for me, it's always been football.
I'm delighted also that Rory Hedderly is here with his colleagues at the Scottish Government's team at the British Embassy in DC. Rory represents Scotland every day brilliantly with passion and purpose. And over the last few years, Rory has become a great partner and friend of the Chicago Scots and of this Scotsman in particular. Rory, thanks for being here tonight. Like me and like Murray, you're from the Scottish Borders, from rugby country. But football, it was in my earliest memories, specifically when Archie Gemmill scored against Argentina. Of course, that's a goal you're far too young to remember from 1978. But how did you feel when David Marshall saved Alexander Mitrovic's penalty to send Scotland to our first major tournament in years?
So just to echo the guys, Gus, thanks very much for having me along here. And you're right, I did grow up in rugby country, although football for me was always my first passion. I kind of pivoted towards rugby when I got a little bit slower and a little bit bigger, as most people in the Borders do. On your question specifically, I think I've had a few gasps and a few laughs at both. I'm sure both of the guys on here are familiar with the meme that's going around of David Marshall checking to see that the penalty was fine and that he was on his line and that they were going to the European Championships before starting that celebration. And I think that meme will raise its head a few times over the next few weeks. Some of you guys have spoken about early memories. I am lucky, coming from rugby country, to have grown up in Galashiels, and my earliest memory of Scotland was in France '98. I was 10. It was actually the last time Scotland qualified for a major tournament, but one of Galashiels' most famous sons, John Collins, was the captain then, and of course scored the penalty against Brazil in that opening game. We won't talk about the rest of the tournament, but that's probably my first real memory of Scottish football. And between then and David Marshall's save, there's been only a handful of moments that I would say were joyous.
I was telling the guys just before we went live tonight about that very match when Scotland played Brazil, and I happened to be working at the British consulate here in Chicago, and asked the Consul General if I could go for lunch, and I said, depending on the result, Scotland are playing Brazil, it's in France, '98 World Cup. It could be some time. You might have to send the dogs after me. And I walked into the pub, and there in the pub was a guy wearing an Archie Gemmill shirt from 1978. And for every cup of tea I had, he had a pint of beer and a cigarette and swore very loudly at the TV as the match was going on. And as politeness and our friendship struck up, he said, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "I work just round the corner for the consulate." And of course, as etiquette has it, I said, "And what do you do for a living?" And he said, put his pint down, he said, "I'm a Presbyterian minister." And I said, "You never are, carrying on drinking and smoking and swearing at the TV." And incredulously, he put his beer and his cigarette down and looked at me and said, "The good Lord forgives me when Scotland plays Brazil." True story, and many of the board will know who that was. Let's take a look at the tournament. A quick overview. It was organised by UEFA, the governing body of European football. It's been delayed 12 months due to COVID. The tournament will be played across 11 venues throughout Europe, 24 teams, each with a squad of 26, and each team will field 11 players and 5 substitutes. It starts with 6 groups of 4 countries, the winners, runners-up, and 4 top third-place teams will advance to the round of 16. Before we look at Scotland's prospects, let me ask each of our panelists tonight for a prediction on who you think will win the tournament, who you think may be dark horses, and which 3 players you're most excited about watching. Jamie, I'll come to you first.
Well, I mean, Scotland are going to win it. Probably the dark horses as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing Robertson, Tierney, and McGinn. And I'm obviously only joking with that. Yeah, I think it's. I think since the tournament's been postponed, and firstly, I'm just excited that there's football on over the summer. We get the tournament can be played. I think France look like the strongest team. I mean, I think the second tier of French players could probably have a good chance of winning it. I think France are probably the strongest team, but I would love to see a country like Belgium do something, because I think they've been really exciting to watch and over the last number of years. A dark horse, I think they're probably not really a dark horse, but I watched the Italy game today, and speaking to some of my colleagues down here a couple of days ago, I said the Italians always do well at big tournaments. They've got a really good pedigree at the big tournaments. So although they're not really maybe a dark horse, I think the Italians could do something interesting in the event. And regarding players that I'm looking forward to seeing, obviously Mbappe is one of the most exciting young talents, probably is the most exciting sort of talent in the world right now. Looking forward to seeing Mbappe play. When I watch these events, I always kind of lean towards the younger players, because it's exciting to see a young player maybe putting his stamp on his career or for his country at these events. I think Wayne Rooney did it for England when he first kind of broke into the scene, one of the Euros of the World Cup. I think it was the Euros, and he just came on as like an 18-year-old and was great. So probably Mbappe. João Felix from Portugal is very good, although that's the group of death. And I'll probably go for Kai Havertz, or the young guy that plays for, I think he plays for Borussia Mönchengladbach, who Liverpool are interested in signing. He's a young midfielder. But I always, like I said, at these events, I always tend to look at the young players, because they're going to be the future, of the game. So those are probably 3 of the players. They're all from the group of death as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
That's a group to look for, I think. Murray, I'll come to you with the same question. Who do you think win dark horses and 3 players you want to see?
I always think the Euros are slightly less predictable than the World Cup for some reason. You always get a bit of a surprise at the Euros compared to the World Cup. Denmark won it in '92, Greece won it in '04. They weren't particularly favoured, but I agree with Jamie. France have the best squad. I think in every position they've got a world-class player. So I think they're correct to be favourites. Dark horses, I'd like to see Belgium win it. I think it's their last chance of their golden generation. Some of their players, Hazard, Lukaku, are getting close to their 30s, if not north of 30. So it's really the last chance to do something in a major tournament. So I'd really like to see them do well. Portugal as well. I think Jamie mentioned that. Bernardo Silva, João Felix, Ronaldo, got a lot of talent going forward, but they rely on Pepe and Jose Font still at the back, and they're, I think, 35, 36. So they've got some weaknesses. And I would have said Turkey up until a couple of hours ago. I had them down as a bit of a dark horse, but not anymore, not surprisingly. So players I'm looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to seeing Karim Benzema back. He's back in the French team, how he links up with Mbappe. I'm a big Man United fan. Unfortunately, I'd like to see Bruno Fernandes play whatever shirt he's wearing. I think he's a great player. And I think I'd like to see a half-fit Harry Maguire be a disaster at centre-half for England. I'm really looking forward to that.
Rory, how about you? What are your thoughts?
So I would probably echo the guys. I think it's France's tournament to lose, but as Murray pointed out, there's been even in my lifetime, there's been a few shocks. Obviously, Portugal getting to the final in Portugal and losing to Greece was one of those. the golden generation of Belgium, they've never convinced me that they're going to do anything. I think having watched the Italians, they look pretty solid. And actually, I probably had them as one of the front runners. And I think actually probably the bookmakers do as well. But I think France probably win it. The dark horse, and I'll make no friends for saying this, I think the Croatians might actually turn up. They were obviously good in the last World Cup. Their players are aging, but they're solid and they've been together for a while. In terms of players, so I'm going to do the opposite of Jamie for two of mine. I'm really keen to see how Lewandowski and Ronaldo go. Obviously, Ronaldo had a little bit of heartbreak despite winning the Euros last time around and not being able to play in that final. And I think that he's somebody that's pushed the record books. He's somebody that people have started to write off in terms of his age and whether he's going to be slowing down. So it'd be really interesting to see how he works with the sort of new guard at Portugal and seeing if he could just do it that one last time. I think it might end up settling the Messi Ronaldo debate, but we'll not go there. And obviously Lewandowski, absolute goal machine. It'll be interesting to see when he's not got the same talent around him if he's still able to bang in the goals. And then obviously from a Scottish perspective, I'm a massive Man United fan. I think McTominay had an excellent end to the season. Watching some of those games, he was all over the park. He's developing an incredible player, and I think that with some of the other young players in the Scotland squad, it's going to be exciting to see.
So the most important group in the tournament, of course, is Scotland's Group 3, which includes Croatia, the Czech Republic, and this wee country to the south called England. But let's take a look at Scotland's squad. Where do you see the strengths and weaknesses in that squad? And maybe I'll come in reverse order. I'll come to you first, Rory.
So I think for me, I'm yet to be convinced that we have somebody that's going to bang in the goals. And actually, when I have this debate with my friends, I've always sort of been a little bit annoyed that since I've been watching football, even the countries who are not historically strong internationally, they produce a superstar from time to time. We saw Shevchenko in Ukraine, Gareth Bale at Wales. And I don't think we've ever had that from or certainly in the last few years in terms of somebody that I know is going to go in the pitch and bang in the goal. So I'm yet to be convinced of that. That being said, we might have two of the best fullbacks in the world right now, which is exciting. So I'm keen to see how they all gel. I am hopeful. I think Clark's approach to having a relatively young squad, I just hope that they all get the opportunities. And obviously, some of my friends who are big Chelsea fans are really keen to see Billy Gilmour get in there. And maybe with a little bit more experience from McTominay and McGinn, we'll see how that plays out. You're on mute, Gus.
Rookie mistake, sorry. Jamie, I'll come to you and then to Murray after that. Where do you see Scotland's strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Rory on the fact that we don't have an out-and-out goal scorer. You know, Rory just mentioned Lewandowski for Poland, who's obviously a world-class striker. And not saying that Scotland, or you expect Scotland to produce a player like a Lewandowski. I mean, we used to with the likes of Kenny Dalglish and Graham Souness and these guys who were all world-class players at the time. But I don't think we've got that person, like Rory said, that can, you're going to get some goals from him, When you look at the team, you don't really know where the goals are going to come from. And I'm not saying we're not going to score. I really hope we do score. The other thing I think is when you put the strongest team on the field, they're an exciting young team. I just don't think we're deep enough as a squad, like when as these games come around thick and fast, it takes a lot physically out of the players, and you'll see England, you'll see your Portugals and Italy and Spain and France. They'll be rotating some players in the early stages, and I just don't think Scotland can really do that. And that's not a slant on who we've selected. That's just the fact that we're a small country and we're competing against some big boys. What I do like though is I do like that Stevie Clark plays a 3-4-3 formation, and the team play it really well. And you've seen it in the Premier League a lot. Team like I think Chelsea play that way as well. Champions League, it can be difficult. They can be difficult to break down. But you mentioned the group that we're in. I mean, I've got Croatia winning it and Scotland finishing second. Czech Republic might make third place as well.
And just before I come to Murray, one of the things I listened to on my long commute between North Shore in Chicago and the Scottish home here is football podcasts. And I was listening to the Totally Football one with James Richardson, and he had Paul Ince on, kind of looking back and forward at the Euro 96 championship. And he said, there's something that can happen in a football team where you have, he described having a table full of Man United players and a table full of Liverpool players. And if the manager does a good job and kind of gets them all together, it can really kind of do something to make the team greater than the sum of its parts. Do you see Stevie Clarke being able to pull that off, or is it just an impossibility for him?
I think he's done it already. I think he has pulled the group together. You see all the little social media posts in the dressing room after the games when David Marshall saved the penalty and stuff, and there just seems like a real close-knit group of players. I don't think there's no superstars in the group, although we've got some, like Rory said, possibly two of the best fullbacks in the world. Scott McTominay, by far one of the best central midfielders in the Premier League. But there's no real superstars. There's no egos. They're just there and they're together. And I think he's done that. And also, these tournaments are, like Murray said, they're so hard to predict because who knows what happens when you get to tournament format. You can go and sneak a result here or there. So, but I do think, to your question, I do think Steve Clarke has brought them together, and I think there's the fact that we're at the Euros is it kind of shows that, I guess.
It does. Murray, let me come to you, and then I'll move on to kind of look at the matches and some of the predictions that you might have for those. Murray, where do you see Scotland's strengths and weaknesses? And if you were in Stevie Clarke's position, how would you approach the coming week?
Well, I suppose I disagree with a little bit with Jamie that I think.
Fantastic. Let's go.
Because everyone's agreeing with anybody. So, in as much as I think out with like McTominay, McGinn, and the quote unquote superstars in the team, you could probably replace a Hanley with a Cooper or a Hendry with a Gallagher, and you probably don't lose too much. So you can rotate the kind of peripheral players in the starting 11. It's just a worry, obviously, if we lose a McKinn, a McTominay, a Tierney, or a Robertson. I don't think we have anybody to replace those guys. And of course, the boys are both right. We've got two of the best left backs in the world, but the irony of that is we play a formation without a left back. But he's found a formation that accommodates Tierney's strengths and Robertson's strengths. So I think we are greater than the sum of our parts. And although we don't have an out-and-out striker, I think the pickup of Che Adams has been a great addition, because it was 18 months ago, I think we were relying on McBurney up front, and Lyndon Dykes came in. That was an upgrade on McBurney. I think, although they're different types of players, I think Che Adams is probably an upgrade in Dykes in terms of depending what you're wanting from your number 9. So I think we're in definitely a stronger position than we were 18 months ago. We've got the young lads coming in. I listen to a lot of those podcasts too, Gus, and there's a big pull for Billy Gilmore to start. But I think Stevie Clarke seems a pragmatist. He's going to rely on the guys who got us there. So I don't think, maybe Jamie or Rory can disagree, but I think he's going to rely on, Callum McGregor, Stephen O'Donnell on the right instead of Patterson and Gilmore, and introduce those boys, hopefully, depending on how the games are going at some point in the tournament, because they're exciting guys, players that we're going to rely on in the next few years. But I think we're in a good position. There's some players better than others, and if you're thinking from the opposition's point of view, they may target Stephen O'Donnell on the right, even though he's played really well for the national team. You could probably describe him as one of the weaker players. But certainly not. Nobody's going to look at our team and think they can attack us down the left with Tierney and Robertson there. So you could maybe get some success down their left, but it's exciting. I really can't wait. And the fact that we're there is just seems to galvanise all the diaspora in the country itself. So hopefully we can deliver. I think the first game is going to be important. We've beaten Czech Republic twice. even though it was a COVID-affected Czech Republic team, and they're a good team. But I don't think they hold any fear for us. If we can get 3 points in that first game, I think that'll take the pressure right off.
I disagree with you, Murray.
I'm gonna be that person that's going to agree with Murray to a certain extent on the Callum McGregor Billy Gilmour debate. But I did see on social media somebody shut down that debate by saying, would Chelsea sign Callum McGregor? Thought that was quite funny.
I completely agree. But I maybe would start Billy Gilmour, but I just don't see Stevie Clark doing it. I mean, Jamie, what do you think? I don't think he's going to start Billy Gilmour.
I don't think he'll start him, no. I think he'll go with the players and the team that's got the group there, which in many ways I can understand. But, you know, there's the romantic part where you're like, do you know what? Let's just throw the kid in there. He's played for Chelsea. He's just won the Champions League, albeit not playing too much. And he's an unbelievable talent. I remember speaking to Malcolm Mackay about maybe 2 years ago now. It was actually in Chicago for one of the soccer conventions, and we were sitting on a panel, and Malcolm Mackay he's like, you know who Billy Gilmour? I said, yeah. He said he's going to be the future of Scottish football for years to come, and he was massively excited about Billy Gilmour. I agree with you. I do agree. I don't think he'll start.
Let me encourage the folks who are online, if you have any questions or comments, or if you agree or disagree, to use the Q&A feature on the chat, and we'll pick up those points. But if we could put ourselves into Stevie Clark's shoes and look at the games that are coming up, and do you think he'll have a similar approach to each game, or will he tailor his thinking and his team to the opponents? Scotland's first match is against the Czech Republic on Monday. Looking at the strengths and weaknesses as we just have of Scotland, what about the strengths and weaknesses of the Czechs? How do Scotland play them, and what's your prediction for the match? Rory, I'll come to you first, and then.
So it's interesting. Obviously, Scotland haven't qualified for a major tournament for the first time in a long time, and for a lot of fans, this will be the first time they're watching it. And I'm sure if you ask Steve Clark, he'll tell you that that's not a consideration when he's approaching these games. But in the back of his mind, he must be thinking about how he might want to navigate the group. And again, in the back of his mind, he will be thinking about the importance of getting a result against England, obviously 4 or 5 days later. I think when it comes to the Czechs, I would quite like to see them go out and just play football. I just want to see them go out there, not be that traditional Scotland team that sort of sit back and are not very attacking minded. I think we've got the players to do that. So I'd like them go out there. I'd like to see the reliance on some of these players that have ended the domestic season really, really strongly. And I want to see some leadership in the centre of the park there. I think somebody like a McTominay can absolutely command a game at this level. So obviously it would be great if we didn't go behind. An early goal would be great. But I think as a fan, and having waiting for this for too long, I'm actually probably less concerned with the Czech Republic game, and I've got my eye on that game next Friday.
Jamie, how about you? Same question. Where do you see the Czechs' strengths and weaknesses, and how would you play them if you were in Stevie Clark's shoes?
I think the first game that teams play in these tournaments can be a little bit nervy, a little bit dicey, and given that Scotland haven't been involved in a major tournament for so long, they could go out and it's like, prepare themselves not to lose rather than prepare themselves to win, right? And there's two, it's very different. I would like to see is, looking at the group, England, Croatia, the other two opponents, this is the one game, it's the first game we play Czech Republic, we're at Hampden. What a great opportunity to go out and start the tournament so well. I mean, it'd be amazing if we could just go out and win that game at Hampden, and really put ourselves in a good spot, because we know that the next two games are going to be tough. I hope we go out and play, have the same approach that we had for the qualifying games and stuff like that, because I thought at times we did some good stuff. We played well. So I hope that we can do that. again, it's one of those. It's the first game in the tournament, so who knows how it goes. I'm just hoping that it's dicey for the Czech Republic and not for Scotland, and we can go out and get the 3 points in that game. That would be an amazing start to the tournament.
Murray, how about you? You're Stevie Clarke for the day, and you're in charge. What do you do?
Well, I don't think he's going to change the formation, given that he's kept the same formation for almost the entire qualifying campaign. So I don't think Scotland will hold any surprises in terms of the personnel or the formation. But as the guys said, there's going to be so much nervous energy there. Even though Hampden's only going to have 12,000 people in, it's going to make a big difference. So I think it's a good opportunity, given that we've beaten Czech Republic twice in the last wee while, to actually get the ball down, push forward, and actually be a bit more attacking. I think it's probably realistic to expect that England and Croatia are going to have most of the ball when we play those teams. So maybe you sit in a little bit more about them. But I don't think the Czech Republic really should hold any fear for us, especially that we're in Glasgow at Hampden. So I think it's a great opportunity. We've got ball players in there, especially midfielders going forward. Get the ball down, push forward, and really have a go at them. I don't know if Stevie Clarke's that kind of coach to really send that message out, but I'd love to see him do that.
I think as well, Gus, that the Czech Republic probably being the easiest game in the group, coming first is a confidence booster. I don't think you've got too many egos in the Scotland changing room, which is a blessing. And I think that if they can go out, score a couple of goals and win the game, that's a huge confidence booster for a few days later.
So here we are then. We've taken that confidence booster and a couple of goals into the next game against the old enemy, which will be at Friday, June the 18th, 1 week from today. And Andy Kerr has asked a question in the chat: where will the matches be shown in Chicago? And a good friend of the Chicago Scots, former board member Fraser Donaldson, has a place in Elmhurst called the Elmhurst Brewing Company. And we're all going to get together for a watch party over there. And it'll be actually the first in-person event that the Chicago Scots have had since we began to open up a wee bit. But here we are, 1 week from now, famous victory opening the championship against the Czech Republic. We'll face England, who are a strong team. They're a young team, but they've got experience. What will Scotland have to cope with in order to face and beat them? And this is the first time we've met England in a major tournament since '96, when Gaza scored that famous dentist chair goal. If you were Stevie Clarke, would you see this as fuel to motivate the team? So, Jamie, can I come to you first?
Yeah, I think it might be more maybe taking a different approach, because I don't know how much more motivation will be needed for Scotland and England at the European Championships at Wembley. I think it'll be more keeping the players focused on and not getting too carried away, not getting too built up to fever pitch where you get too uptight. And I've been in those games where you get too uptight and you start making mistakes. You're not as focused as you should be, and it's all just stress. I think it's more going to be keeping the players really focused, keeping them calm. We know England, we know who they are. We watch them, all these players in the Premier League every week. But I think Scotland, if Scotland have got, when it comes to getting the chance to win the game, it's going to have to be they've got to be together as a group. They've got to be calm, composed. Obviously, they need to work their backsides off, because that's what it's going to take. But if they can remain calm and composed and be together as a group and as a unit, which again, it really looks like they are, then I believe that's how we're going to get a chance to get a result at Wembley. It's never going to be easy. England will have a lot of the ball, but I believe that'll be kind of Scotland's chances if they just, again, remain composed and remain together as a group.
There's a couple of questions which I'll come to in the Q&A section, but Murray, I'll come to you with the same thing. How does Scotland cope with England?
Well, I think the England fans being back in at Wembley may actually be a good thing for Scotland. I think, I don't know if there's any English people listening in, but I get the sense from the group chats I'm in with a lot of my English friends that they're far too overconfident about the game. So they expect just to roll over Scotland. So I think if we can hold them at 0-0 or get 1-0 up, the crowd will start getting on the back. after, at half time, 50, 60 minutes, the players will start to get a little bit nervous and it'll play right into our hands, hopefully. But we're obviously going to have to be comfortable with sitting back and dealing with not too much possession, because England have some good players, obviously. But I think we could do it. You never know what can happen. That's the beauty about football. Any 11 players can be any 11 players on the day. So I can see a sneaky 1-0 win in the future.
And who do you think the danger players are for England? Who would you be watching out for the most?
Well, I've always liked Phil Foden. I think he's their best player. But England seem to, similar to Scotland, whose best players seem to be in the same positions. I think England have, possibly 5 or 6 world-class players all looking to fill in 3 positions. So Foden may not even start. Sterling may not even start. I think Jadon Sancho and Foden are 2 of their best players, but they may not even be in the starting lineup. So it doesn't matter how good they are if they're sitting on the bench. So I'd worry if Phil Foden's on one side and Jadon Sancho's on the other. I think Mason Mount will start in behind Harry Kane. Everybody knows what Harry Kane's going to bring. He's great at set pieces, clinical finisher. He's not the quickest, but he can finish a ball. So, it's just about limiting chances for Kane, and hopefully Foden is not selected.
Did I see that Foden got his hair cut like Paul Gascoigne?
Oh, yeah.
Oh dear. Rory, same question to you. How do you cope with England?
Yeah, so I think there's probably less expectation that Scotland are going to get a result against England amongst the players. And actually, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That could actually play in our hands. And I think the longer we keep them at 0-0 or even sneak a goal, the more and more frustrated they're going to get. And that happens when you're playing against world-class players who turn up and expect to just knock you off the park. I think that it's going to be difficult. I think if we sneak a goal, it's going to have to be either set piece, maybe a penalty, or on a counter-attack. I think, obviously, the Robertson-Tierney threat is going to bang the balls into the box. But as we discussed, I'm not convinced that we're going to have somebody on the other end of them. And I think that shows the value in somebody like Harry Kane, who's always going to be there. An old-school number 9, you don't really see too many of them anymore. Most of these strikers nowadays kind of play all over the park, down the left, down the right. It's rare to see that sort of big, tall number 9 straight down the middle of the park. I agree with Murray. I think Foden is an unbelievable talent. I was reading this week that there was various different data sets where they were valuing him arguably the best player in the world on his day. But out with that, the pace that England have with your Rashfords and your Sterlings and your Sanchos, I mean, our defence is going to have a pretty torrid time. But I think if we can continue to frustrate them, and the longer the game goes on and that momentum starts to shift, it'll be good to watch. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, Harry Kane kind of haunts us from the 2-2 game a couple of years ago, where Lee Griffiths scored those 2 incredible free kicks, and then Harry Kane popped up at the end and sort of put a dampener on it. But yeah, I mean, we didn't really talk about England in the first question, but you've got to think that they're one of the favourites with the talent that they have on paper. But they say this every time.
So I would love a Harry Maguire own goal in the 94th minute.
Keep talking.
Only goal of the game.
A couple of questions from Alan, which are related to this. First one is, does it not all really come down to only beating England? And then this is one for you, Rory. Along those lines, we'd love to hear from Rory what the chat at the British Embassy in DC is like.
Yeah, I think so. I think anytime Scotland play England, and it doesn't just have to be in football, there's that rivalry, and it's more about the atmosphere and the experience of being involved in the game. And then I think being Scottish, if the end result goes in our favour, it's almost like a bonus. The chat in the embassy, so we have a soft diplomacy team, and they're actually putting together a watch party in DC. And actually, I've been out here long enough that when the World Cup was out here, and I was at the Welsh watch parties and stuff like that. So there's a great atmosphere. DC is a very international town, as most of you will know. So there's a huge sort of soccer/football following. There is going to be a Scotland-England watch party next week. Unfortunately, I'm not actually in the city at that time, so I'll not be going along. But the adopted Scots that work in my team, the American ladies who support us day to day, they have Scotland jerseys, and they will be going along to the bar to represent us.
So I've got a couple of other questions before we get to the final game, and then I'll ask for your predictions. But I've made an assumption as you've been talking, gents, and that is that we've beaten the Czech Republic and we've just beaten England. And John Parks asked, if the pressure is off at game 3, then do you think of starting Gilmore?
Well, I think the only way the pressure's off in game 3 is if you have 6 points by the time game 3 comes, because some of the best third place qualifiers, third place teams qualify, right? So even if you have 0 points going into game 3, you still have a chance of potentially qualifying. So I guess the only way the pressure is off if we win the first 2 games. And if that happens, yes, he will start. I think he'll start Gilmore in game 3.
This is a comment from Paul for you, Jamie. It said, the England defence, it's great. And no Maguire, that must be an invitation to attack. Shame we don't have Charlie Adam to ping in those corners.
Yeah, Charlie Adam's going to be a massive loss in the Scotland team. Paul, you know Charlie well from his Stoke City days. And the comment about the England defence being great. Yeah, I mean, I actually hope Maguire plays, because I'm not a fan of Maguire at all. I don't like Manchester United. Sorry, Rory and Murray, I know you've both commented that. I love Scott McTominay. I loved Alex Ferguson, just don't like Manchester United. But yeah, I kind of hope Maguire plays, so we can see him score that own goal in the 94th minute. And yeah, Paul, Charlie Adam would maybe fit into that midfield 3 with McGinn and McTominay really well, actually, put in some of those corners and free kicks.
So let's move on to the final game against Croatia, who, as Rory mentioned, made it all the way to the final of the last World Cup, only to lose to France. Gents, what are your views on the 2021 version of Croatia? And then I'll come to our predictions. Let's go with you, Jamie, first.
You know, everyone's talking about them being like, oh, they're an aging squad, or, you know, they've got a lot of players in their 30s. Yeah, Kovacic just won a Champions League, and Modric plays for Real Madrid, and has been, you know, you can say they're an aging squad, but in the modern day game, the way that these players look after their bodies and the way that they approach how to take care of themselves is great. I think Croatia are going to be a really strong team. And yeah, people are saying, yeah, they're getting old and stuff, but I think the Croats they've just got a lot of quality. And again, they're a group that, like shown in the last World Cup, when you talk about fight and spirit and being together, they showed that. I think you'll probably see that again. And I mean, I've got them finishing top group. So I think in the last game we've beaten Czech Republic and England, and we'll probably rest some of our players because we know we're going through. So Croatia will probably sneak that 1-0 against us and finish top of the group.
Rory, how about you? Croatia.
So I tend to agree. I think that they are, as I said, I don't even know if we get away with calling them dark horses, but having looked at even like at the sports books, and the sports books thinking there's 35-1 chance of them winning, I think that's incredible value. I mean, people are saying teams like Denmark have more of an opportunity than Croatia of progressing, and I don't know if that's influenced by the fact that everybody always expects England to just do really, really well. I'd love to see the Croatians do well. I'm a big fan of the style of football they play. Obviously, it's a bit of a nightmare that they're in our group, but I would love them to turn over England and do us a favour there. It's interesting because, as Murray said, with the best third place teams qualifying as well, it'll be interesting to see how the draw plays out after that, because then you really get down to the business about who you might be coming up against in the next round. And I'm being overly confident in saying that Scotland are going to get there. So hopefully by the time we get to Croatia, as Murray says, we've got that 6 points and we can breathe a little bit and see where we get to. But playing against them, I would take a draw if you handed it to me right now.
Murray, how about you?
Well, 100%, I would take a draw right now from Croatia. I think I agree with the boys. You know, I was looking at the odds as well, and no one's really talking about Croatia. I mean, it was just 3 years ago they were runners-up in the World Cup, and they've still got some great players, as Jamie said, Rakitic, Modric, even though they are age and they've got big tournament experience. You know, they probably have a weakness in defence. They've got, I think Lovren's still playing at centre-half, and even in his pomp, I never really fancied him as a player. So, I mean, they are there to be got at, but I think it's one of those games that we're going to be sitting back. They've got some great ball players that'll just move the ball. So, sitting a lot of time and being comfortable without the ball, I think, during that game. I think that the schedules might help us going into Czech Republic, having them first, which I think there's no easy games here, but it's probably our easiest game of the three. And if we can get 3 points in that'll just take the pressure off and let everyone relax and enjoy it a little bit more for the tougher games to come, I think. But I agree with Rory. If we can get a draw out of that game, that would be a tremendous achievement.
There's a question from John Parks that I'm going to get to in just a second, but we'll also have a question from Kenneth, who writes, Senior editor Mark Searles wrote on June the 2nd that England versus Scotland is one of the oldest rivalries in soccer history. England will be favoured, but this will be a crazy match. What kind of crazy do you all see might happen?
Trafalgar Fountain, probably, with all the Scots supporters down there.
We're encouraging Scottish fans to not travel unless they've got a ticket for the game. I think it would be different circumstances if it was a packed out stadium, and a packed out Wembley with Scotland sneaking a 1-0 win, 94th minute winner or 94th minute own goal from Harry Maguire, as Jamie said. Then yeah, it'd be a lot of fun to see that. In terms of the rivalry, I mean,
travel, Rory.
Say that again.
Do you think a lot of fans will still go down despite the?
I hope not. I hope that they'll take advantage. So obviously there's going to be about 2,500 people who are lucky enough to get tickets. I don't know any. I don't know how much they would go for on the black market. But I think that the fact that the tournament's even going ahead, coupled with the fact that there are going to be some fan zones in Scotland and stuff like that, after 15, 16 months of having a pretty miserable time, I think that people are just going to be hugely enthusiastic that there's going to be football on the TV over the summer and that Scotland are playing, and they're not having to go online and adopt a team for the international tournament, which was kind of the way that I approached it for the last sort of 20 odd years. I always just picked a couple of my favourite players and had to adopt a team for the tournaments. So I'm hoping that people don't travel. I think that the light at the end of the tunnel is there, and I wouldn't want people to be doing anything to sort of jeopardise the easing of restrictions and life returning to normal. And then obviously when we win the tournament and there's the momentum behind us and we're looking to the World Cup and things like that, then they can travel wherever they want to go.
How about you, Jamie? Anything you can see that's out of the ordinary? By the way, Rory, I'll take that kind of crazy, if that's the kind of crazy that Kenneth was asking about. Scotland as victors will do.
Yeah, I think just the whole occasion. I think anytime Scotland and England play against each other, I remember way back to one of the qualifiers. It may have been, I don't know if it was one of the Euros or one of the World Cups when Scotland they got through the group stage, but they had to play a playoff game against England, and it was Paul Scholes scored 2 goals at Hampden. But then we went down there to Wembley, and we won 1-0. Don Hutchison scored for Scotland, and Scotland were amazing that night. They played England off the park. To maybe see something like that, to maybe get a performance that's just like totally unexpected, that would be fantastic.
That was the last time Scotland played at the old Wembley, so we'll always be able to hold that over their heads.
Yeah,
the famous towers.
Yeah, so like maybe not like in football craziness. Like if Scotland could come out with some kind of performance where we just go there and listen to scrape a win, defend for 90 minutes and scrape a win, yes, I will take that any day. but you know, even just to go there and just perform and show that we can play against them would be amazing. I would love to see that. I would love to see that along with 3 points.
So that kind of leads into the question that John asked quite nicely. You know, looking at the past, the last game at Wembley that Scotland played and so on. I'm going to ask it, and then I'm going to ask kind of the opposite of John's question also. John asks, what sins of the past in major finals do we need to learn from? Let me go to Murray first.
Well, I was only one at the time, but my dad always tells me about Argentina 78. You know, Ali McLeod doing the Tour of Hampden as a victory parade before the tournament starts. Just the overconfidence. I don't think anyone's accusing Scotland of being overconfident this time around, but I think it's managing expectations. It would be important going in. Just be, you know, hope's a killer. You know, I'm always hopeful. I think all Scotland fans live from the hope, you know, and we hope this is going to go well in the tournament, but I don't think anyone's going in thinking we're going to win the whole thing. So I think it's about maintaining that positivity throughout the tournament, regardless of the results, and supporting the team to do the best they can, you know, to show well, regardless of what the outcomes are.
And Rory, how about you? What sins of the past do we need to learn from?
So I think the good thing is that obviously we've qualified for a major for tournament for the first time in 23 years, and that's a huge step in the right direction. And I think having a young squad and playing 3 games at a major tournament is a massive step. I would hate to think that we would go and manage to achieve a result against England, and they would think that and still have the group on the line going into the 3rd game, and them approaching that game thinking that they're superstars all of a sudden. I don't think that they will. Would I have liked the Croatian game to come first and England almost be the icing on the cake as a sort of win and go home game? Absolutely, I would. I think the sort of euphoria that exists when Scotland beat England at anything is great, but when it's a group stage and there's potentially advancing from the group on the line a few days later, I just hope that the players stay relatively grounded, and I wouldn't, much to what Murray said around expectations and thinking the job's done. I just hope that, and I think they will, that Steve Clarke keeps them grounded. You'll notice that every time I answer, I refer to us beating England, which is good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Jamie, how about you? What sins of the past? And then I'm also going to ask everyone about favourite memories, and particularly you, Jamie, having been so close to representing Scotland in the international scene in your caps. Lessons of the past first, though.
Yeah, I hope we don't take the approach of, right, we've made it, it's the first time in 23 years that we're at a major event. I hope we don't take the approach of, right, we just need to like kind of not make ourselves look bad, so we're going to go and sit in and defend and do all that, and just I would love to see us, you know, exciting young team. I'd love to see us just be like, do you know what? Let's do country proud. Let's go try and play good football here. Let's not sit in. Let's not try and grind out results. Now I'm saying that, and it's kind of romanticizing a little bit. But I would love to see us just not be like, don't play to not lose. Play to try and win. Let's go and play to win. Why not? Especially first game, Czech Republic at Hampden. Let's go and play to win. England at Wembley, yeah, it's different, but let's still set ourselves up, and let's still have a mentality and a mindset of let's go and play to win here. Do you know what I mean? What have we got to lose? We're not going to win the tournament, and realistically, we're not going to win the tournament. But there's nothing to lose. Let's not try and play just to kind of not get beaten or not get beaten too badly. Let's go and play to try and win games. And if we do that, I believe that we could surprise a lot of people, because we've got a really talented group.
Just before I ask for your scores and predictions for each of the 3 games we've got, let me ask about your favourite memories as well as lessons from the past. Let's remember some of the famous times. You know, Murray, you mentioned Gordon Strachan. I mentioned Archie Gemmill. Rory, you mentioned John Collins, and we talked about David Marshall. What memories do you particularly take with you? Start with you, Jamie.
For me, I've got a memory that no one will know about, playing for Scotland under 17s against England at Inverness, Cali Thistle Stadium. as you can imagine, a cold, wet night, and we beat England 5-1.
Hey.
I scored a goal directly from a corner kick. So I was taking an in-swing corner with my right foot, and I was always decent at, I was always pretty good at crossing and putting in free kicks and set pieces and stuff. So I've whipped in this corner with my right foot, and I've just caught it perfectly. And as soon as it came off my foot, I just knew it was going to be dangerous. And it whipped in, and it hit off the back post, like right high up in the back post, and wrapped around the inside of the net. And we had quite a few. We did 4,000 or 5,000 fans in the stadium, and I remember just this. You're got the Scotland strip on, and you're playing against England, and I've just scored a really good goal, and that's my best memory from that national team. Aside from making my debut, and but the other memories I've got is just I think, what was the game where they'd be not. I can't remember who we played. I was in primary school at the time, and I think Richard Gough might have scored a goal for Scotland to qualify for. Might have been Italian.
In Cyprus, I think it was Cyprus 3-2. It was in Limassol. Yeah.
Yep, in Cyprus. I remember we were in primary school back in Glasgow, and the whole school basically shut down, and we just the TV screen there, and we were all watching the Scotland game. And I remember that was to qualify for Italia 90, right? Yep, I've got a great memory of that.
Well, I need to apologise to Rory and Murray, because asking about a favourite memory and having scoring for Scotland is a pretty good one. So we've got a couple of minutes left, and I do want to get your predictions. So Murray, I'll start with you, if that's okay.
Predictions of winners for the whole tournament?
No, the scores for the three games we're having. The first group: Czech Republic, England, and Croatia. What's the scores going to be?
Scotland 1, Czech Republic 0.
Right.
Then it'll be Scotland 1, England 1, and then we'll take a draw against Croatia as well. Doesn't matter. 0-0, 3-3, 4-4. Doesn't matter. We'll get a point.
I'm going 3-3.
Sure.
There we go.
There's no way Scotland scored 3 goals in a game.
Enough. They will. It's done.
So I actually think I'm going to be optimistic and say 1-0 against the Czechs. I'm going to say 1 or 0-0 against the English. I'd like to see 1-1 because I always think 0-0s are a little bit boring and you've maybe wasted 90 minutes. So I'm going to say 1-0 against the Czechs, 1-1 against England, and maybe 1-1 against Croatia.
I'll take all those results.
No losing.
What about you, Jamie?
I think we're going to do a bit better at Hampden in the first game. I think we'll win 2-0. I think I agree with Rory. I don't like the 0-0s, but I think we'll take a point. I'm going to go for 0-0 at Wembley. I think it's hard to predict because you don't know how Croatia are going to what their results are going to be. But I think we'll go. I think we might lose to Croatia. I think it might be 2-0 to Croatia. Sorry, lads. Sorry.
I think they'd still go through, wouldn't they? 3 points.
Yeah, we could sneak into that third place team, maybe 4 points.
Well, I wanted to thank you, gentlemen. We've got 1 minute before 6:30. It's Friday night, and this has been Dram in discussion. So I wanted to hoist a glass of something good and golden, toast your good health, but also toast to Scotland's famous victories in the Euro Championships. To everybody who's listening, thank you very much, and we'll see you on the other side of this incredible tournament. Cheers.
Cheers.
Flange
bar. Thanks, gents.
Thank you.
Good night. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.